I'd like to call the case of Will Smith versus the Spanish language. This is case number 1, and it will be presided over by this spring Spanish court. We will now proceed with the evidence.
Meg ust a tu dis fras de bac a.
Perfecto.
Bien.
Boy de dalm ata. Eso.
Perfecto, perfecto.
Overruled. This evidence cannot be admitted given that it appears to be a very bad joke played on poor Will Smith. Moving on to the next exhibit. Okay, so I have come across footage where Will Smith actually speaks Spanish. I'm going to watch it, comment on it, and come up with a final decision as if I were a language court. Let's see what he does.
Okay.
Pablo,
¿Cómo estás?
bien. ¿Y tú? Bien.
Estamos en Londres
¿En
con
Londres?
300 españoles.
Wow.
I don't know if you could tell, but his face changed right after he was told that he's in front of 300 Spanish people, so that's a lot of pressure on him. He did say bien correctly, and he also said Londres, which is the translation of London. But let's see what he does next.
Perfecto. Toda la gente habla español.
¿Todos?
Okay, so he tries to construct a sentence, but he makes a tiny mistake in terms of pronunciation, but he corrects it immediately. So he says gente, and then he says he changes it to gente, which is the correct pronunciation of this word, which means people. So Spanish has 5 different vowels, and they are all pronounced the same every single time. In this case, the vowel is la letra E, letter E, and it's pronounced E, so gente. So he said gente, and then he changed it to gente, which is good. Like, he realized that he made a mistake and he corrected it on the spot, and that's very good. Another thing that I have to mention is that he says español, which is understandable because the letter ñ is it's a peculiar sound of the Spanish language, and it's obviously very hard for non-native speakers to pronounce it correctly. And so he tries to make an effort by using a trick that Spanish learners are taught, which is combining the I and O sound, as in canyon, to pronounce la letra ñ. So that's why he says español, but the actual pronunciation should be español. So that's something he has to work on. Let's keep on watching.
London.
¿Sí?
Okay. Voy a tratar hablar un poquito español.
Perfecto.
Okay, so it's funny how he said Londres before and now he's saying London. I don't know if because of the pressure he's feeling, he felt the need to rely on English. So it's funny because it's been less than a minute and he used both the word in English and the word in Spanish. So London and Londres. Let's see if he does it again. And also, there's another thing with his pronunciation in the verb tratar. So he says tratar, and that's very common in English speakers who are learning Spanish. So the R sound is very difficult for many of them, and that's what we are seeing here. So he says tratar instead of tratar. So that's another thing he should work on. And again, he said español instead of español, which is a lot more nasal. But overall, it's great that he's trying to challenge himself and trying to speak Spanish in front of a lot of people who are native speakers.
First, gracias por venir a London.
Es un placer estar siempre contigo.
Pablo, tú eres mi hermano.
You can tell he's an actor. At this point, he's thanking the show person, showman, for coming to London. So I don't know if Will Smith was in London and this person came over to London to greet him, or if the show was just taking place in London and Will happens to be there and he's invited to take part in the show. If it's the second option, then it doesn't make a lot of sense that Will is thanking the other person for coming, because Will is the one who came. In that case, he should have said something like "Gracias por invitarme" instead of "Gracias por venir." So the showman should have said "Gracias por venir" because Will is the one who's coming, and Will should have said "Gracias por invitarme." Thank you for having me.
Es basada en 1000 años en el futuro.
Ajá.
Okay, la película tiene acción y los efectos especiales, pero la película es de un padre y un hijo, como se dice, trying to survive.
Intentando sobrevivir.
Es así.
It's funny how they reacted to Interpreter. So it's good. He almost managed to say an entire sentence from beginning to end, but then towards the very end he switched into English because he obviously doesn't know the words. So he said trying to survive, and that's when the interpreter came in. But he knows how to say película and acción and efectos especiales, which is vocabulary that is very common and I would say maybe sort of specialized in the cinema field. So it's good that he knows vocabulary in Spanish that corresponds to his specialty.
Hola.
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 Dios?
It's possible.
So he asks God, "Is it you?" That's funny. I have to point out that he has worked on his pronunciation, or he's actually very, very well aware of the fact that the H is silent in Spanish. So he has said hola, hijo, and he hasn't said hola or hijo. And that's good because most English speakers would actually pronounce the H because that's how it works in English.
Necesito hablar inglés.
Por favor.
So we've reached a point where he's no longer able to speak in Spanish because he maybe doesn't know the vocab, or he's like he knows he's not there yet, and it's good that he knows, and that it's also good that he's able to verbalize that and to tell the other person, you know what, I cannot move on from this point, I have to switch into English. And that word, that phrase, necesito hablar inglés, that's a lifesaver, and it's good that he knows it as a Spanish beginner. So since we've reached this point where he doesn't speak Spanish anymore, I'm going to watch some other footage. Okay, so the footage I'm going to watch right now is from 2014. The previous one was from 2013. So we're gonna see what happened in a year in terms of how much that will improve. So let's see.
Yeah!
He's always very excited.
Hola, gracias. Estoy muy contento de estar aquí. Es mi primera vez aquí en Argentina y me encanta Buenos Aires. Fuimos a un partido de polo. Let me see, okay. Necesito practicar más.
No, está muy bien.
Muy bien, gracias. La natividad.
Okay, so we can definitely tell there's a sort of improvement because he doesn't make as many pauses as he did in the previous video, he made a tiny mistake there in terms of pronunciation. So it seems like the h sound is very hard for him. So remember how previously we talked about how he pronounced gente, and now he's saying Argentina. So he didn't actually pronounce it. And I think that suggests that it's a hard sound for him. And that's something he might have to work on. So he's realizing that he doesn't have as much vocab as he would like to fully express what he's wanting to tell the audience. But that's good. I mean, in terms of how fluent he is in relation to the previous video, I think you can see an improvement. He's not pausing as many times as he did. And he also knows another life-saving phrase, which is necesito practicar, which is telling the other person that you're not very comfortable with speaking Spanish just yet. And that also is telling you as a learner that you need to keep on practicing.
Muy bien.
Muy bien, gracias. La natividad, el partido de polo con la natividad, y me encanta.
I honestly don't know what he's talking about in here. I don't know if it's an Argentinian thing. I don't know if it's Christmas, because Natividad, it's sort of kind of like Christmas. So I think there are countries where people say Navidad and there are countries where people say Natividad. So I'm not sure what he's talking about here, because considering the context, he was talking about a sort of sport. I don't think it makes a lot of sense that he's talking about Christmas now, but that's a hard word, Natividad, and he managed to pronounce it.
La comida aquí, tome Malbec. Tome Malbec y mate. Mate.
Sí.
Mate. And estoy muy contento de estar aquí en San Telmo, el gran barrio de tango. Y las
So it's very good that he's a lot more fluent. I can definitely tell he's a lot more fluent in relation to the last video. There is an issue though, and he managed to correct it as well, because he said tome at first when he was talking about something he drank. And he realized that he made a mistake, because if you say tome, then you're not talking about yourself and something you did in the past. Instead, you're talking about you in the formal version. So usted tome, which could mean here, have this or take this. But he actually wants to say tome, which means I drank. And so he corrected it. And he realized that he said tome, so he stressed the first syllable and then he stressed the second syllable to indicate that it's an action in the past, and that's good.
Y las mujeres de Buenos Aires son muy inteligentes. Sí. It's really hard.
So again, we have this h sound, and he manages to do it in the word inteligente, which means intelligent. But he has trouble when he says mujeres, which means women. So he says mujeres in not a very natural way. And he also said mujeres, which is not a word in Spanish. And then he says inteligente, and he pronounces the e sound correctly this time. Because if you remember from the last video, he said gente, and now he said inteligente, and that's good. But he made a tiny mistake because he's talking about mujeres, which is in plural, and so he should have said inteligentes. And he said inteligente, which is in singular. So, but in terms of pronunciation and how fluent he is, I think he's improved in relation to the last video. Now let's keep on watching and see what he does next.
Llegué hace 5 días y trabajé en la calle ayer, y la gente son muy fantástico, y quiero decir gracias a la gente, y estoy listo.
¿Sí?
Muy nervoso.
No estás nervioso, está perfecto.
Mi corazón.
Then it's funny also because he stresses the j sound like they do in Argentina. So He's saying he's gonna be there for a couple of months, so his ear might have already picked up the Argentinian accent, because people say llegué, ayer, calle, whereas if you were in Spain or Mexico or Peru, you would hear llegué, ayer, calle, which is very different. Oh, and there's another time, well, it's not a tiny mistake, this one is a huge mistake, because gente is feminine and singular, and then he says son fantásticos, and that is plural and masculine. Fantásticos, the feminine would be fantásticas, but then since you have an S there, that's plural, so it doesn't match. Gente fantásticos, there's no agreement. He should have said la gente es fantástica. And then he moves on to talk about himself, and he says estoy listo, which was very good, but then he forgot the word or doesn't know the word. And he says nervoso, which is Italian, not Spanish, because in Spanish the word is nervioso, so he's omitted an I to say nervous.
To sound estúpido.
No está sonando estúpido.
No, okay.
Está perfecto.
And again, he switches back and forth from English into Spanish. So he says, no quiero to sound estúpido. So he knows the order of the words. He knows the grammar, but he doesn't know the actual words. So he mixes languages, and maybe he didn't have much trouble saying estúpido because it's very similar to the word stupid in English. So he's making a huge effort, you can tell. So I'm going to watch a different video now because this one's over. Okay, so this footage is from 2018, so 4 years later. So let's see how much has his Spanish improved in 4 years.
Mucha gente en los comentarios se burlaban de mí porque no conocía las palabras de La Bamba.
Okay, it's improved a lot because he manages to say an entire string of words without making pauses. And that's good, so he's a lot more fluent. And he also says se burlaban de mí, and that's very good because I think that's vocabulary you don't usually know when you're a beginner. So he actually managed to not only to say the whole sentence from beginning to end without making a lot of pauses or very notorious pauses. He actually like the whole construction, so the grammar, the vocab, and everything was correct except for one tiny detail, which is he made a translation, a literal translation from English into Spanish when saying las palabras de la canción. That's not something we say in Spanish, we say la letra de la canción. And I think that if you had known the chunking method that we developed at Spring Spanish, he wouldn't have made that mistake, because if you learn chunks in context, so word combinations that never change depending on context, and if you learn them in that context, you don't have to rely on your mother tongue to convey the message you want to convey. And so he says las palabras de la canción, but the idiomatic way of saying it in Spanish would be la letra de la canción. Okay, so let's see what he does next.
Para bailar la bamba, para bailar la bamba se necesita una poca de gracia. Una poca de gracia, arriba, arriba, y arriba, arriba. Ay, arriba, arriba, pa' mi padre, por ti seré, por ti seré. Yo no soy marinero, yo no soy marinero, soy capitán, soy capitán, soy capitán. Ba, ba, bamba, ba, ba, bamba, ba, ba, bamba, ba. Now.
Okay, so he's showing off his ability to sing along, and that's good because singing along is a strategy that language learners use not only to acquire new vocabulary, but also to work on their pronunciation and to get to know, at least to a certain extent, the culture of the language they are learning. So this is good, and I really have to applaud the fact that he was able to pronounce arriba. So the double R or rolled R, arriba, and that's very good because that sound, that particular sound, is always very hard for non-native Spanish speakers, especially English speakers, because it's a sound that doesn't really exist in their language. And so the fact that he was able to pronounce it and that he was not thrown off the game when he came across that word is very good. So I can definitely see that he made an improvement from 2013, which is the year of the first footage I watched, versus this last footage, which is from 2018. So there's a 5-year frame where he worked on his Spanish. So now that we have analyzed the evidence, it's time for the verdict to be announced. After having examined the evidence, this language court has determined that the score deserved by the language skills of Will Smith is 3 out of 10. Yes, Will. We applaud the effort you have made in very different situations, but there are things you still need to work on. Therefore, we invite you to contact us via email because we have prepared an entire Spanish lesson for Hollywood's stars like yourself. If you're interested in learning Spanish, please subscribe to our channel where you'll find many different videos that will allow you to improve your Spanish skills from the comfort of your home. Thanks for watching, and case closed. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share this video with your friends.